over the last year and a half of creating content, I haven't crossed the old pond very much, mostly because my earliest initiation was through the Englishmen and they always seem to offer enough to not necessitate the journey. And yet, I think it's high time, and so I make this exception for Edgar Allan Poe. From the limited exposure I have to Poe's work, something that has stood out is the element of imagination and a characteristic touch of literary finery that results in the poem's ascension from a product of fantasy to a lasting work of literature. Poetry Foundation's essay corroborates this admittedly amateurish view of mine. His self-declared intention was to formulate strictly artistic ideals in a milieu that he thought overly concerned with the utilitarian value of literature, a tendency he termed the heresy of the didactic. Annabel Lee is a lyrical description of a forbidden love story that met with a premature climax. A narrator, presumably a man, mourns his lover and the love of epic proportions they share, with an unmissable dissension against the powers that be. The poem is written in 6 stanzas with their lengths varying between 6, 7 and 8 lines. While a rhyme scheme may be evident if carefully perused, it isn't uniform given that the lengths themselves are varied. There remains considerable discourse lent weight to by the poet himself that the poem is a ballad, and while some elements are indeed present, a narrative tone and a folksy story, a ballad was typically written in quatrains with alternating stress patterns for a musical quality, and that obviously cannot be said for Annabel Lee. The poem opens with a mythical setting. He describes a beautiful maiden by name Annabel Lee who lived in a kingdom by the sea a long, long time ago and lived only to love and to be loved by the narrator of the poem. The opening couplet of the second stanza suggests that this was a childhood love story, the best kind if you asked me, and they shared a love that was coveted by the winged seraphs of heaven, or angels. And this, the envious attention of the angels, was the reason that their love came crashing down. In the third stanza, we are witness to the high-born kingsman, where the word high-born is the earliest and perhaps only signal of the fact that the relationship was looked down upon due to vague but fiercely upheld societal benchmarks. They took her away and buried her alive in a tomb. According to the dismayed narrator, she was killed purely because the angels could never be half as happy as them. And yet, the narrator affirms that their love was greater than those of the older and the wiser, and this severance was only transient. He will be with her again, and neither the angels nor the demons could stand in his way. Every night he lies down apparently near the tomb with the dark, starless sky looming large over him and dreams of the day when he can be with his bride again. Forbidden love stories are not exactly novel material in literature, and all kinds, blood feuds, class differences, out-and-out prejudices are devoured by the readership. And in all of them, there runs one common thread, an achingly beautiful description of a shared love that transcends mortal understanding and sometimes even capability, which has a lasting and surreal effect. Annabel Lee is a shining example of this specific genre. The sheer poetic value cannot be overstated either. We have instances of alliteration in the lines "not half so happy in heaven" and "the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul." The employment of refrains, a poetic device whereby lines are repeated for emphasis and unwavering attention. Annabel Lee is beautiful, she's mine, she's beautiful, she's mine, and of course an awful lot of hyperbole, a literary device of exaggeration. I love the imagery as well, especially when she's being taken away by her own family and buried alive. The image is clean like a knife cut, entirely unforgiving. This part of the video is entirely optional and will be spoilery if at all you plan on reading this book, so you're free to skip over. Despite my hankering for an acquired taste in literature that is more diverse and not specifically meant for teenagers, I come back to young adult fiction and fantasy with a frustrating inevitability. My last such experience was the Dark Artifices series set in the Shadowhunter world. The trilogy stems from a love story between Annabel Blackthorne, a shadow hunter, someone that's part human and part angel, and Malcolm Fade, a warlock, someone that's part human and part demon. The relationship was forbidden, with Annabel eventually buried alive by her family for pursuing the union. Malcolm Fade, however, spends a large part of his immortal life unaware of her true fate until he learns that Annabel Lee, written by Edgar Allan Poe, was in fact about her and inspired by Poe's times with the downworlders of the demon-human offspring community. Agitated, he works recklessly with magic in an attempt to resurrect her, which eventually takes the story down a whole lane of necromancy and scandal and heroism. The mildly mind-bending crossover between a dead poet and a fictional dead woman and her fictional dead lover notwithstanding, the poem is the perfect premise for Lady Midnight, especially also because we are introduced to another forbidden romantic relationship, this time between Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorne. This pair does get their happy ending, which makes you believe, at least for a little bit, that if you loved with a love that was more than love, it would be enough.